Glenfiddich 12-year single malt Scotch whiskey. A well-earned celebration in a glass. What you drinking there, Mitch?
Apple juice.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
Well, what do we have here? You are delightful.
I bet you have taste for the finer things in life, don't you, darling?
Oh, I know they do, so I'm sure they already know about each and every Bethesda game that just got put on Gamepass.
What's that? You don't? Philistines. Well, go on, Mitch, tell them.
I will tell them. When we drafted games for this Bethesda Special, Alec didn't know anything about Prey, so he didn't know it was an FPS space thriller, which is the phrase you can say in his ear if you want him to ruin his pants. But I'm a selfish bitch, and I wanted to play it, so I told him The Evil Within was like Resident Evil 4, took Rage 2 as a token of goodwill, and launched myself into the game relatively blind. And honestly, that's the best way to do it. I'll spare you the story specifics, because as an immersive sim, Prey will deliver them to you better than I ever could, but I'll sell you on the game's mechanics instead. So Dishonored was into MILFs, right? And Bioshock, being the promiscuous cougar she is, was on the prowl. The two locked eyes from across the room and started smacking on each other's butts almost immediately, while taking breaks to play Alien Isolation. 9 months later, Prey. To any of you who haven't already begun downloading, let me elaborate. This game will feel very familiar to fans of Arcane and the genre in general, but sets itself apart with inspired decisions at every turn. You're stuck on a space station with spooky shape-shifting aliens, Typhons, and have to figure out what to do about them and figure out why your brother has been keeping you sedated. Stealth is emphasized, as is Bethesda's tradition, and will permeate pretty much any of the many playstyles. The gameplay's flavor is delivered through neuromods, little brain implants you can use to upgrade your character in a terribly irresponsible fashion. These neuromods are scattered throughout the environment, further incentivizing exploration, and can further your proficiency in science, engineering, or security for boosts in medic, crafting, and combat systems respectively. But this is just Dishonored. What about Bioshock? You yell from your mud pits, you animals. Well, beyond those traditional paths exist 3 paths where you harness Typhon abilities, and you will not like how these are implanted. No sir. In the end, players have no shortage of unique choices to make to create a one-of-a-kind build, and can count on being consistently surprised by the game's elaborate systems from beginning to end. Prey was received with middling praise at the time, mostly due to severe performance issues on base Xbox One and PS4 consoles, which resulted in a choppy experience with terrible input lag. Luckily, the game was quickly given Microsoft's FPS boost treatment and now runs at a smooth 60 FPS on Series X with minimal input latency, so there's never been a better time to play for console users. Prey was what I launched first from my Bethesda draft selection, and I came back to it between nearly each of the others I reviewed. I think it's really special, so add it to your list.
Hey you! You're finally awake. Question. Have you ever woken up after a rough night, either in jail or even en route to your own execution? I have. 4 times. Once, I woke up on a prison ship in Morrowind when I booted up the 3rd title of the Elder Scrolls series for the first time. That time was admittedly in 2021, 19 years after its initial release. Seriously, if this game was a person, it could vote or even get drafted into the military and probably die because its combat system is the hottest of garbage. Instead of using hitboxes to register damage, it instead relies on an invisible dice roll to decide whether you even hit the target with each swing. That's frustrating, but it's just one of many dated systems in this game that don't really make sense to me now. Frankly, I don't have the context of playing this game anywhere near its release, so I don't get the sensation of this game gently caressing my nostalgia. I understand the importance of this game though. I get that it was groundbreaking and it set the bar for subsequent fantasy RPGs. Morrowind has my respect. Thing is, today, I miss the creature comforts that features like autosave and a modern control scheme offer. The graphics aren't as awful as I might have imagined, and the world itself is still breathtaking in scope and scale. This game definitely shows its age though. Those of you with a special place in your heart for Morrowind will probably really enjoy this. I mean, it's all here in all its glory. For me though, and others getting around to playing this game now, it's interesting, but like in the same way that a museum piece is. It's worth checking out, but I can't really see myself spending a lot of time playing it, especially with no mods. Second, I woke up in a dungeon in Cyrodiil. Some guy in the cell across the hall was being a real mouthy douche, I remember, until, no lie, the literal Emperor of Tamriel came through and let me out. Nice guy, really. He died. But before that though, he said something about me being the chosen one, yada yada, world in grave danger, blah blah, make haste, deliver this ring, find my son, etc. I honestly don't know. I just kinda left and did whatever the hell I wanted. And that's honestly totally okay. That's actually the point of Oblivion. This game offers hundreds of hours of content and very little of it involves the main quest. This is another one that I just got around to playing now that it's on Gamepass, and even looking at it mod-free in 2021, the graphics are alright. In fact, they're pretty nice considering its initial release in 2006. This is particularly good news because personally, I couldn't get any mods to load from Nexus at all. After a bit of research, it doesn't seem like there's an easy way to get full mod support for Oblivion. It isn't lost on me that this will likely be a deal breaker to some players, especially those who have played this game previously with thousands of mods at their disposal. Personally, I can live without it because I've never played the vanilla game before, and frankly, I'd like to before I worry too much about modding the game anyway. Even without mods, this game is definitely functional and modern enough to be enjoyed today. That garbage combat system is gone, though there are still some bloated skill systems like athleticism and acrobatics that I could totally do without. All the dialogue is voiced, and Oblivion's world seems generally richer than Morrowind's. This is worth picking up. In fact, I'm leaving this one installed because I fully intend to keep playing it. Third, I must have really fucked up because I woke up in Skyrim on a cart on my way to my very own summary execution. I created my character, presumably just to see his perfectly curated features roll through the dirt in a couple minutes, and wouldn't you know it, Stealth Archer. This was not planned, except for the Skyrim-style determinism, which makes it the only sensible choice. Anyhow, I didn't lose my head, because a big-ass dragon showed up out of goddamn nowhere, killed almost everyone, and apparently made my crime seem pretty unimportant, which allowed me to escape. Now, who doesn't love this game? Skyrim's world is by far the most elaborate and complete of any of these single-player titles. Once again, the NPCs in Skyrim are all voiced, but this time the NPCs seem to have much more awareness of the world around them, with some notably hilarious exceptions, of course. All this makes Skyrim one of the most immersive games I've ever played, and definitely my favorite in the series. But we all know that Skyrim can be a buggy mess sometimes, even suffering the occasional outright crash. Fuck it though, it's Skyrim after all, and it's nothing that a quick restart can't fix. Just remember to save often. Really, the only issue that I have with Skyrim is with the shit UI on the PC version. The good news is that Skyrim boasts a thriving modding community with plugins such as Sky UI that address this problem beautifully. The bad news is that right now, the Game Pass version of Skyrim lacks support for certain kinds of mods, and unfortunately it seems some of my favorites, Sky UI included, didn't make the cut. For the time being, plenty of mods are fortunately supported through the in-game mod manager, including some of my favorite visual mods that make Skyrim feel almost brand new. Again, this is my favorite title in the entire Elder Scrolls series. I could go on gushing about it forever, or you could just take the hint and download the damned game. Next, I'll tell you about my weirdest run-in with the law to date. I'm not really clear on what I did or how I got there, but my shriveled up husk of a soul was confined to the Whaling Prison in Cold Harbor. At least, that was my introduction to Elder Scrolls Online when Mitch and I first started playing years ago. Since then, they've changed the first few hours of the ESO story. I've played quite a bit of this game, and I'm definitely gonna keep playing it. Here's the deal though. If you like MMORPGs, you will love ESO. If you like Elder Scrolls games, well, you might like this game depending on whether or not you like MMORPGs. What I'm trying to say is that, especially from the start, ESO is a really good MMORPG first, and a really good Elder Scrolls game as a far distant second. The main story alone is over 100 hours long, and that does not include the fathomless sea of diversions and side quests you'll inevitably dig into along the way. So, if you're in it for the story and the exploration, it's going to take a lot of time and patience that isn't necessarily required for the other titles. For fans of this sort sort of game though, that's a good thing. It just means that the scale and depth of this game is absolutely immense. ESO, unlike the other Elder Scrolls titles, does not focus on just one region. Instead, it opens up the entire continent of Tamriel for exploration. The world of Tamriel is open, expansive, and most importantly, alive, even including voice lines for all but the most trivial NPCs. I can't even imagine the heroic effort that went into making this game. The best part is that unlike many other MMOs, ESO is not subscription-based. You can always pay for cosmetics and crafting supplies and that kind of thing, but it's all optional, and none of it counts as a pay-to-win barrier by my judgment. So once you own it, you aren't really required to pay another dime in order to enjoy it for as long as you like, especially for console players, and really for everyone. If you're looking for an open-world MMORPG, I honestly believe that it does not get any better than this. So in sum, any game worthy of carrying the Elder Scrolls name is worth a look in its own right. In particular though, if you're looking to lose a couple hundred hours in the blink of an eye, I recommend checking out Skyrim and Elder Scrolls Online.
I'd love to say I have a long and storied history with the Doom franchise, but although I fostered Alec into PC gaming like a darling baby fawn, I only became a PC gamer in 2014 myself, when I convinced my parents I needed a desktop for 3D modeling in school, which is like half true. It was during that time in school that I just soaked myself in the PC news cycle. DirectX 12 and Vulkan were just emerging as graphics APIs, and Doom 2016 was using the latter, which had me salivating for the game. Total nerd shit to geek out on, but at the same time, being able to run Doom on an AMD upper mid-range card with nightmare graphics settings at 1080p 144Hz was a transcendent experience. I had never played anything like it before. The soft reboot struck gold with their push-through gameplay philosophy. To survive, you must attack and brutally dismantle your opponents with an aptly named glory kill, an animation chock full of iframes, blood, rage, and a showering of health. For ammo, you take your chainsaw to the demons like a lumberjack desperate for neon candy. This frantic, power fantasy-inspired gameplay was what defined Doom for me. That and Mick Gordon's absolute ass slapper of a soundtrack. I drank Doom down fast and loved every second. But unfortunately, this shit ain't on Gamepass at the moment, so let's move the fuck on. Fast forward to 2020, where Doom Eternal launches with the premise Hell is on Earth. The marketing campaign was a little much. I have to imagine the team at id looked at their 2016 release and said, this is good, but it can be better. Because there's not a lot about this game that isn't a direct improvement of its predecessor. Push-through combat is iterated upon, with multiple ways to gain health, armor, and ammo. Levels are larger, more fun to traverse, and feel more like Zelda temples at times than corridors to the next FPS arena. Yet, there are plenty of those, with optional Slayer gates to take on if you're interested in a quick break from the mayhem in exchange for advanced mayhem. In exchange for taking on extra challenges and exploring, you'll be granted a waterfall of Doom Guy upgrades that just do not quit. These range from gun upgrades that allow you to let forth an endless swarm of rockets like some sort of bumblebee wizard, to supercharging your plasma rifle after a fully charged exhaust blast, like some sort of lamer, more traditional electricity wizard. The story of the game is much more front and center than in 2016, while not requiring the player to know any previous story beats. And it's pretty good. Although some of the more fan-servicey moments felt real cheesy as a newer fan, and to see the true ending of the game, you'll have to buy the Ancient Gods DLCs. But there ends my list of complaints. I loved this shit. It's the best FPS campaign I've ever had the pleasure of binging, and pretty much anyone I've asked has had similar feelings. So let's have you go start that little download right now, and I'll just keep rambling. It might make sense to stop there, with the end-all be-all of Doom experiences being realized with Eternal. But if you check out Steam, there's been a real resurgence of classically inspired FPS experiences with a retro coat of paint. So why not really dig into these classic Doom games and see which ones satisfy my bloodlust? I mean my lust for death. My endless rage. Okay, Google.
Yes?
Remind me to hire Exorcist.
Hail Satan.
So the original Doom released the year of my birth, so naturally, I'm not an OG fan. However, I can still appreciate a good rip and tear, and the classic formula of explore level, find keycards, hunt for secrets, move on holds up. Doom is broken into episodes, each containing multiple levels to blast your way through one after another. I kinda treated these like little self-contained bites. Each one can be completed in under an hour, and while the gunplay is lacking with no control on the Y-axis, I had a decent time. I have to warn you though, the head bob got to me. I played this and Doom 2 back to back, and by the end of the session, I really had to lie down with some mild motion sickness. So yeah, still a whiny baby. Not much separates Doom from Doom 2 aside from the level design and their presentation. Levels are longer and more elaborate. It really feels more like what Doom would become than a proof of concept like the original. Gone are the episodes, as the campaign has a much more definitive path from beginning to end. Also included are a few bonus levels, one being Wolfenstein themed, which I really enjoyed. Both Doom and Doom 2 have merit, and I'd happily recommend both of them, but that was until out of the corner with a steel chair came Doom 64! It's like Doom 2 with better textures and an actual lighting engine? Levels and puzzles are again more elaborate, guns have a meatier punch, and exploration is more varied. I'd say it holds up as a standalone experience, so if you're looking to get back to that retro feel, I'd say here's where you should start. Then I guess we should talk about Doom 3, huh? Doom 3 was disappointing, especially given how lauded it was at the time. It plays just fine, and for 2004 was way beyond what many others were doing visually, but to me, it's not Doom. It's much more of a survival horror than a run-and-gun shooter, and even forgetting their return to form in 2016 and beyond, this game was an outlier in the series. It's like Half-Life with demons, and I know that sounds better than it felt to play. But I did have very defined expectations, as this was the last of the Doom games to play for me. If you're looking for a corridor shooter with horror elements, I really think there's a scarcity of them on Gamepass. Well, actually no, there's not. Dead Space is on EA Play, which is included in Ultimate and PC Gamepass. So unless you really need to be on Mars and in first person, go play that. So where does that leave us? Where's the flowchart for what Doom... well, looky here. You want something modern? Play Doom Eternal. Unless you want to play 2016 too, then play both. You want retro? Play 64, then run through 1 and 2 if you're still hangry for it. And if you want a horror corridor shooter, then get out of here, cause that ain't Doom.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the evil within. As a darling baby fawn with a low tolerance for gratuitous gore and jump scares, I'm typically not a huge fan of horror games. But nonetheless, I took this game on the promise that it might be something a little like Resident Evil 4, which is a game that I actually love. I based this assumption on Shinji Mikami's role as director on this project, so with a healthy dose of cautious optimism, I booted up the game and was immediately greeted by absolutely crippling frame rate issues, stuttering, and visual artifacting. Fantastic. Now, what I wanted to do was close this game and write a review that leans on a bit where I rapid fire some half-assed review like an auctioneer on crystal meth, or perhaps I could write about some fever dream where I'm unsure of whether I'm British or Australian. What I wanted more... No, that's not right. What I needed more than my very next breath was to fulfill my duty. To be the discount daddy you deserve. To review this game. So I googled a fix. I pulled some black magic fuckery with the config file and limited my frame rate to 60 frames per second. Bada bing, bada boom, we are in business. Then I carefully counted down every passing second until my mandatory 1 hour of gameplay had elapsed. Then I quit immediately because I got scared and I didn't want to play anymore. Honestly though, that's about how long I needed to play this game to know that it wasn't really my cup of tea. Resident Evil 4 was more of a third-person horror shooter, with emphasis on shooter, which is why I liked that game. This, on the other hand, was more like a story-based survival horror game. I know that because almost my entire time playing this game was spent hobbling around unarmed and impotent, dragging a gaping leg wound through an ankle-deep pool of human giblets, and trying feebly not to get kebabbed by some meathead zombie with a chainsaw. Thanks a lot, boys. I hate it. I really should be objective here, though, so I will be. First of all, they need to fix the frame rate issues. It really should not be my responsibility to unfuck the game's crappy frame rate cap implementation. Beyond that, though, this game is absolutely gorgeous considering its 2014 release date. It's extremely challenging in all the ways it should be, stealth is well executed, and the story so far as I've seen is actually really interesting. So, if you like horror games generally, you'll like this. I, on the other hand, do not like horror games, so Bethesda, if you're listening, please pay for my therapy.